I was wearing this red cap because I was like, oh, let me wear like a red cap like Annabeth because I love her. I don't think it's a red cap. It's a Yankees cap, and I don't have a Yankees cap, but I realized that it's my Luke's cap from Gilmore Girls, and I keep talking about how much I love Luke from the Percy Jackson series, so I need to talk about Percy Jackson. Hi guys, I'm Libby and welcome to Punsy's Palace, where I do all things Disney, hence the Punsy, and all things regarding my life and home, hence my palace. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe down below for more Disney and lifestyle content. I have a new obsession, and it's called Percy Jackson. I just wanted to do a quick little video about this book series because I think it's so good. Yes, this is a young adult novel. The Percy Jackson and the Olympians series is for like 12-year-olds, but I read it for the first time ever at 23 years old. Yes, it was pretty big when I was about the age when it was coming out and everybody was super hype about it, but I didn't read them. I only saw the movies. Yes, and now everybody who is a Percy Jackson fan and who has read the books and seen the movies, you guys know how actually terrible that is. But the thing is, I didn't know that the movies and the book were like that different. This isn't to say anything like the movies were really bad, because if you look at the movies on their own, they're actually like kind of fun. I thought they were just, you know, kind of a bad adaptation from the book or whatever. Oh my gosh, was I wrong? It was like somebody had read the book, told somebody about it, that person told another person about it, and then that person told somebody who had to pitch it to the movie producers to produce the movie. That's how far removed it is from the actual storyline. And because of that, I didn't have any interest really in the books, because from seeing the movie, I was like, yeah, it seems kind of interesting, but I don't know if I would really like it. I don't really want to get into it. And then I started talking to Michael about it, and he absolutely loved the Percy Jackson books growing up, and he told me I needed to read them, and now I'm obsessed, and I love them a lot. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience reading them at 23 instead of having a bunch of nostalgia about it. So yeah, I haven't read any of the spin-off series of like Heroes of Olympus or the like Kane Chronicles, I think that's what they're called. I will be starting the Heroes of Olympus book series soon-ish, like February time. So don't spoil anything for me in the comments. I'm trying so hard not to get any spoilers about the characters and who they are and who they end up with and all that kind of stuff. Oh, spoilers ahead if you haven't read these. So first I wanted to kind of talk about my comparison of the Percy Jackson books to other young adult novels, most notably in comparison to Harry Potter, which is the book series that I was a huge fan of growing up. So look, I love Harry Potter, but I will admit I found a bit more joy reading these books than I did most of the times that I've read Harry Potter. Like, I love reading Harry Potter. It's a good and fun time, but I actually found reading these books a lot more enjoyable, and I wanted to get through them and read them as fast as possible, which is something I can't say for the Harry Potter books. Even the first time around, I was kind of just like, all right, come on, get to the point, and found myself picking up and putting them down a lot. Whereas with these books, I would pick them up and somebody would have to tell me that I needed to put them down and go to sleep. And I think this is a lot to do with the pacing of the books. The pacing in the Percy Jackson books, I think, are just so much better. It's very fast paced. A lot happens in one chapter. It feels like in each chapter, there's some kind of task or adventure or small monster that they have to beat. With that, it keeps the chapters moving very quickly and a lot of stuff happening while not discrediting a lot of the world building, character development, and things like that. Those are all still happening pretty gradually and pretty perfectly, but each chapter feels like something good and exciting is happening. And I think it's a lot to do with the fact that it's quick and to the point with how it builds the world. And I think it has a pretty good excuse of being able to do that very succinctly, because a lot of it is set in the modern world. So you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining what the Empire State Building looks like. It's pretty easy to tell people what that looks like, because those are things that we know pretty well already. And whenever we do go to more magical enchanted places, Percy is such a good narrator that he compares it to something that we know in real life, which makes it so much easier to just be like, oh yeah, it looks like this thing that, you know, every normal kid reading these books would know what it looks like. And so he's able to explain these wonderful worlds in like 3 sentences. And it also has another benefit of it surrounds itself with Greek gods and stuff like that. And it doesn't need to take a lot of time explaining who these people are, just a little bit more about this is what they look like in this world. And so, I don't know, I just felt like there was a lot more urgency in the Percy Jackson books about getting this story out and telling you what happened. And speaking of exciting, I felt like many times there was actually a sense of danger in these books that I didn't really get in some other young adult novels that I would read. Because I felt like a lot of the times, I felt like Percy actually did get hurt, or his friends did get hurt, or there were actual consequences to them getting hurt, and then they would have to figure out some way of how do we get them to feel better, or how do we get them to be safe? I feel like in a lot of other ones it's like, oh, I got like a scrape, but like I made it out fine, or there's like a magical spell and it's like, boom, I'm okay now. And especially in Harry Potter, I felt like a lot of the time Harry pretty rarely gets hurt, and when he does, it's only every once in a while. I feel like a lot more stuff happens to Ron and Hermione every so often, but she doesn't get into like dangerous hurt territory as much as the other two do. And Ron, I feel like, gets hurt a lot more, and it's just kind of brushed to the side. Whereas Percy, I feel like, as the narrator, was a lot more concerned with his friends getting hurt than I think in Harry Potter, where Harry sees that his friends get hurt and kind of just... Okay, also, I love the humor in these books. I think the humor still holds up. I didn't know any of the jokes in these books, and I still found myself laughing out loud or giggling a little bit when I was reading them at 23 years old, which is saying something, that the humor in these books actually really does hold up. And I think a lot of it has to do with Percy just being a great narrator. Trust me, I enjoy sassy Harry. I love sassy Harry. Do I think he should have been a little bit more in the books? Yes. Should he have been in the movies a lot more? Absolutely. But I just feel like Percy's just a lot funnier just in general in narrating the story. And I think that's a big divide in the two books, is that the Percy Jackson series is told from Percy's perspective, first person, whereas Harry Potter is told third person, kind of following Harry, and you get some of Harry's like thoughts from time to time, but you miss out on a lot of, this is how Percy sees the world. This is how Percy's interacting with the world. These are his jokes and his inner thoughts. And you connect with him so much more than I think you ever really do with Harry. Like a lot of the times if somebody says, oh, my favorite character from the Harry Potter books is Harry, you're just kind of like, okay, did you like really even read the books? He's not even the most interesting, cool character. Because from a third person perspective, he's not. There's a lot better characters out there. But from Percy's perspective, Percy's one of my favorite characters because I feel like I know him because I read the story through his eyes. I felt it as he felt it, and so I feel a lot more connected to him. Also, I just feel like Percy is not only funnier, I think he's a bit cooler, all around a lot more selfless person than Harry ever is, and he absolutely has a giant heart while still being silly and impulsive and just unwise a lot of the time. Oh, speaking of unwise, somebody who's super wise is Annabeth, and I love her. She is an absolutely awesome, amazing female character in this series, and she is, from the beginning to the end, amazing. And she's the daughter of Athena, if you don't know, and she's so mature for being a 12-year-old in the first book. Being 12 to 16, you're not really that mature. I'm just gonna say it. I love the way Annabeth is because she is still pretty immature. She doesn't understand her feelings for Percy, really. She's does those like jealousy kind of things that a girl that age would do. She also, you know, is just like not wise all the time and understands that she's not wise all the time. But because of that, she puts extra pressure on herself because she's like, my mom is Athena. I have to be wise all the time. I have to know everything all the time. And I just think it makes it so interesting for a character who's that young, who has so much pressure on her to be the smartest person in the room. And she is smart so much of the time while still being a perfectly flawed character, and also just having like a really interesting hobby for her that isn't just like brought up once, like I really like architecture, and then she brings it up like all the time. No, it's implemented in there in really good ways, and I think you understand it and you know a bit about it in the books prior, but then when you get to Battle of the Labyrinth, which is the fourth book, it makes sense why she wants to go on this quest so badly to go through the labyrinth, because it's like the greatest architectural invention ever. And it makes sense because you've known that she liked architecture from the beginning of the book series. I love just how introspective and smart and perfect she is, while also being completely not perfect by being super insecure about herself and always wanting to see the good in people even if they're bad, and just she's great. Also, I absolutely love how many villains there are. Like, I know in the Harry Potter series, there are quite a few villains, and obviously, like, Voldemort's your big bad, and then you have a few villains here and there. And that's the same kind of in the Percy Jackson series. You have Kronos as your big bad, / Luke, and then you have some others here and there. But what I feel like Percy Jackson did a little bit better is, for a lot of these characters, they don't really go towards being good or bad. It's not really like, this is a good person, this is a bad person, whereas Harry Potter, it's much more, we need to know who's good, who's bad. There are some good people who have some like actually like really interesting choices that they have done in their past. Like Dumbledore is a complete character, but you're supposed to know Dumbledore is great the entire time. He is a good guy. I just feel like by the 7th book, you realize he may not actually be that great of a guy, but because it's from Harry's perspective, you still want to think that he's a good guy, and it doesn't really paint them in a good, this is a gray area person. Whereas in Percy Jackson, it's a lot more, this is just a person and they're doing what they've always done. A lot of the monsters are just doing what they've always done in the myths and the legends. They're not out to actually be good or bad. And yes, there are a lot of people who are on Cronus's side, a lot of people on the bad side. And the thing is, I love that it's written in a way where it's like, yeah, what Cronus and them are doing is absolutely terrible, but Percy, as a demigod, understands it. He understands why they think this way, and he's like, but that's not a good way of going about it. And I love that the gods aren't made out to be these wonderful, good people. They're actually kind of terrible to their kids. Kind of terrible in general because they don't care. Kronos is like the big bad guy of the series, but you know Luke is like actually really the main bad guy, and Cronus is more of like an idea. And I think that's just so cool because Luke is only a few years older than Percy, and he's corrupted this bad, and Percy can see a lot of himself in Luke, and they were friends, or at least Percy thought they were friends at the beginning, and then it all turns sour, and I just think it's the coolest kind of villain journey that he goes on. Also, there's just so many good characters. This is not to say that there aren't good characters in other young adult novels and stuff, but I just love all the characters in this. Love Talia. I love Zoe. I also think Nico's really cool. Grover's pretty awesome and hilarious, and Luke is an awesome character. I just talked about him a lot. I also actually really dig Clarice, and of course I love Percy and Annabeth. They're perfection. Okay, so now I just want to name some of the scenes from each book that I really, really love, because a lot of people always ask me, which one's your favorite book? And I can't really always pick one. I mean, I guess the 5th one, I did love a majority of the book, whereas the other ones I loved a lot of just different scenes. I just love this series. It's really good. So Enlightening Thief, I absolutely loved the entire character of Ares and that whole storyline when he gets introduced with the cheeseburgers, and then they go on the whole Tunnel of Love escapade with the little spiders and stuff from Hephaestus. That's a really cool chapter. I really liked that. As well as the entire Vegas Lotus Flower Casino. Always thought that was like a really cool scene in the movie, and I think it was like done pretty well in the book as well. I really liked it in the book, but I also absolutely love that it's not just something that happens in the 1st book, it's actually something that comes back later in the 3rd book with Bianca and Nico. So cool. I love that. And the Sea of Monsters book, I really, really love 2 chapters. It's the guinea pig chapter with Circe, with Percy and Annabeth. I love that chapter. I think it's really good. And I also really, really love the siren scene where Annabeth wants to hear the sirens and Percy has to say, oh my gosh, I love that chapter so much. In Titan's Curse, I literally love the entire like last battle with Percy having to hold up the sky from Atlas, because it felt like such a power female battle. Like that entire book was like very power female heavy, and I loved it. And Percy, just his great contribution was holding up the sky in that last battle instead of, oh, I'm the main character, I have to do stuff. But no, it was like, no, he's gonna hold up the sky while Talia and Zoe and Annabeth are out here just kicking butt, taking names, and it's awesome. I also really loved the introduction of Zoe as a character. Absolutely loved getting to know Talia a little bit more. Like, yes, Annabeth was gone for a lot of the 3rd book, which could have made it one of my least favorites, but because they introduced Zoe and I really liked her, and they had Talia and I really liked her, I was like, okay, I'm still getting some cool female characters up in here. I like it. I dig it. Cool with it. Battle of the Labyrinth. Oh my goodness. The Calypso chapter where Percy is on her island and just all of that. It was just so beautiful, and I was like, I was not expecting to feel this way in a book about this like 14-year-old kid. Wow. And also like the entire lava sequence where he gets shot out of the volcano and stuff anyway, and that whole thing with Anna. Like, that was just a beautiful chapter. And then The Last Olympian, like all of it, it was such a good book. It felt like just such a perfect ending to the series. And it didn't feel like, oh, this is a lot of fan service kind of stuff. It was like, this is a very logical way to end this series. This is what we've been building up to, but also expanding on it and having this just intricate, amazing story to it. Usually when you get to like the last book in a series like this, it's like, okay, we have to build up to the last battle and that'll be like the last 100 pages. No, the last battle is like, I think about 70% of the book, and it's great. The book starts with like the first battle. You have like 2 chapters of like, here's some in-between filler stuff until we get to the last battle, and the last battle is literally the rest of the book, and it's so good. Like the entrance of Nico and Hades, the Clarice and Selena moment, the battle with Luke. So yeah, I read this book series that came out when I was 12 years old, and I read it at 23 for the first time ever without really knowing any spoilers about anything that happens in the series, besides I knew that Luke was a bad guy at the end of the first book because I watched the movie and I knew that. But basically, if you watch the second movie of Percy Jackson, you don't really get any spoilers about anything besides knowing that Tyson is a Cyclops and Percy's brother. I loved all of these. I'm super obsessed with it. I definitely want to be Annabeth for Halloween, and I really want Michael to be Percy because I think that would be so cool. And I just want all the Percy Jackson merch, all the memes. Right now, I can't really look any of them up because they might spoil the rest of the books for me. Let me know if you guys would like an update of what I thought of the Heroes of Olympus series once I finish reading those, and if you want to hear any of my thoughts about those, kind of like this video, but probably a lot shorter because I'm not having to explain why I haven't read these books. And also let me know if I should keep reading more of Rick Riordan's Riordan? I don't know. More of his books or not. Let me know. I'm super excited for the TV show that is coming onto Disney Plus. So much so that I will promptly cancel any and all plans that I have the day that it comes out, and I'm going to watch all of them in probably one sitting and then rewatch it continuously to boost that thing so we get more seasons. Guys, I haven't loved a book series like this in such a long time. This book series like really made me just really love reading it again. They definitely do. They stand up to the test of time because it's been a while since they came out, and I read them for the first time and I think they're amazing, and a lot of people who have read them when they were little reread them this year in 2020 in quarantine, and they're like, yeah, they're still good. They're still awesome. And with that, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will see you guys next time, probably with Disney content again, but there might be more Percy Jackson content in the future. But until then, guys, farewell.